In this lecture, we're going to see that we can do multiple declarations in a loop. And what do I mean by this? Well, take a look here. Here we have a for loop. There are a few things we still had in the last lecture. For example, you see this size t variable, which is initialized to 0. But we have a comma separated list of other variables that we can really put in here. And you have to be sure you know how to look at these kinds of things. This is still a for loop and it still has 3 parts. And these parts are separated by these semicolons here. So we have the first part which goes from size t all the way to y22 here. We have the second part which says y greater than 15. And we have the third part which starts after this second semicolon here. And all of these 3 things are in the incrementation part of the loop. Okay, so now that we can have many variables in this initializer part and this incrementation part, which one do we use as the controller for our loop? Well, you're going to have to choose. For example, here, we are using y as the controller of our loop. The moment we choose it as the controller of our loop, we have to make sure the incrementation part is doing what it needs on this variable to make sure the loop ends properly and does whatever it is we want to do in the body of the loop here. And this is really all there is to multiple declarations in a loop. You can put multiple declarations in the initializer part. You can put multiple declarations in the incrementation part. And you have to choose which of these variables is actually going to control how the loop ends. And in this case, we chose this 15 here. Okay, one other thing many of you might be asking themselves is, what is the type of this x and y here? Where they are going to be of size t, because that's what we have declared here. And if you try to print the size, you're going to see that it is exactly what we expect. Okay, now that you have an idea about how this works, let's head to Visual Studio Code and actually play with us. Here we are in our working directory here. The current project is this one, for loop with multiple declarations. We're going to grab our template files as we usually do, and we're going to put that in place. And we're going to open this thing in Visual Studio Code. And we're going to open up our main CPP file, take out what we don't need. Let's bring this up. And we're going to go down in main and put in our loop. Okay, before we run this code, I want to make sure we are clear on the types of these variables here. So we're going to print that. We're going to say stdc out size of I. That's already known because it is a size t. And we're going to also print all the others. Okay, we have these values printed out now. Let's put a separator here so that we can see this because this may run multiple times. So we're going to put a line here to kind of separate these things and make it clear what we have in our output. And we're going to try and build this. So we're going to run the task to build with GCC. And we're going to bring up a terminal of our own. And after we do this, we're going to clear and run Rooster. You're going to see that the sizes of these guys are 8. So they must be the same type as size t here. The question many of you might be asking, is it possible to specify your type here? Let's try this and see what we get. Let's try to make x an int here. And you see that the compiler is not happy with this, so we can't really do this. We're going to build with GCC and see the compiler error and expected this and this. You can really declare multiple variables, but all these variables have to be of the same type. Okay, now that this is out of the way, we can actually take out all this because it is noise to me. And we're going to take out the comment and see what this program is actually doing here. So we're going to build with GCC again. The build is going to go through again. We are going to go down here and clear and run. And if you look, we have these values printed out. We're going to start with I0, X5, Y22, which is what we have in here. And once we hit the incrementation part, I is going to be incremented to 1. We're going to add a 5 to X. And we're going to minus 1 on Y here. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Every time we go in the loop, we're going to be basically doing these changes. So we're going to have I equal 1, X equal 10 because we are adding a 5 to it. We're going to minus 1 on Y. We're going to go on the other iteration. We're going to get to a 2 for I. X is going to be 15. Y is going to be 20. And we're going to keep going until we hit the point where the test for the termination of the loop fails. If we hit a point where y is not greater than 15, and that's the point where y is equal to 15, the loop is going to end, and we're not going to go inside and print that 15. We're going to stop right there. And it takes some time to really understand this. It is not that complicated, but the main message here is that you can have multiple declarations like this. You can't declare your own type here. They have to be of the same type. This is a limitation, but this may come in handy in many applications that you are going to be building with C++. Okay, this is really all we set out to do in this lecture, but before I let you go, I want you to be aware that this comma-separated list of expressions here is actually an operator in C++, and this is called a comma operator. And we're going to learn about this in the next lecture. Go ahead and finish up here and meet me there.